Hello and welcome to the latest edition of In Conversation With. I'm delighted to be joined here this evening by a former Aberystwyth town goalkeeper, made over 200 appearances for the club over a 13-year period. I'm joined with Mr. Stewart Kinninmonth. Stu, how are you, mate?
I'm all right, thank you, and good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all again.
On behalf of all of us here at the Green Army, thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. And before we'll touch on this a little bit later on behalf of us all, we are very sorry to hear about the untimely passing of your dad, who was highly thought of by many, many within the club, and he'll be a great loss to the community and to us as a football club.
Thank you all, everybody. I mean, I'm going to say that the support we've had from everybody has been amazing. You know, Abertown, one of the first ones to message was Mr. Donald Kane, sent a lovely message to myself. And the day of the funeral last Tuesday, they had the flags at half-mast. So we drove down here with Dad, you know, in the hearse. And Donald and Myron Appleton, an ex-manager of mine, and who also worked with Dad, were there, and a few others played with Dad or played under Dad. It was you know, very humbling. Thank you very much, everybody, indeed.
We'll touch more on your dad, because obviously I want to talk at length. I know you can talk at length about your dad as well, but let's take it back to your childhood for a start now. What were your first footballing memories, and what were your big influences growing up? Well,
my first football memories was my dad, of course. Saturdays, at the time he was playing for Aberystwyth, and I'm not sure if it was the Aberdeen district or was it the Central Wales leagues then. I didn't know at the time that he'd been playing for Aberystwyth. But he flitted between Mach and Aber between 64, I think, when he came down, to what I can remember him coming back to Aberystwyth in about 72. Obviously, Dad was a big influence on me. I used to go and watch him play, and when he'd come home from work, I'd be, Dad, come outside, set the ball lads up, and can we do this and can we do that? From that, then it went to joining my local junior side at the time, which was Aberystwyth Hurricanes, that played in the Aberystwyth Junior League every Saturday morning. We'd come down to Aber on a bus and we'd play down there. Met some great boys down there that are now lifelong friends. People like Martin Griffiths, Guy Blair was another one, Stan Richards, who's Stephen in it. But Stan, the man, we all know him as. Well, I could go on and on, you know, but that was my first memory of my younger days in football and coming down here. And then being selected for the Aber Junior League to represent Aber over in Sambriere. We had trips there, and obviously, you know, it was a great experience for us as youngsters. And then we moved down to Aberystwyth at the age of 13. I'd been playing in the junior league for the last 4 years prior to that. So when we moved down here, it made it a lot easier for me coming down to Aberystwyth, because I knew everyone through the football. So yeah, that was that. And obviously Dad and the other football managers in the junior leagues. Peder Eklund was one. Mike Jones, Cliff Bates, and then obviously when the junior league finished, it was under 16s and time to go to play for, or try and get into Aber Youth then. And I think, Myron Appleton was the manager there then, and I think John Bungalow, they call him John Davis. I'm lucky enough to live next door to his son, Martin. He was the youth team manager, and Peter Rennie was another one. So, and I think his son Fred, who runs the Downies in town, he was involved in it, and the likes of Johnny Ireland, Anthony Brown, myself, Tony Mailer, who was an old school friend of mine, who went on to bigger, better things, and now he's over in America, living the dream over there. And the likes of, obviously, Martin Griffiths, who coached Aber later on. Martin was a couple of years younger than me, but we both lived in Penparky. We both grew up together. I started playing with Aber Youth, and then Martin came a bit later on. I think he was 2 years younger, or 3 years maybe. But he played in the youth team. Dad actually managed Aberystwyth in my final year. And Martin, I think he was about 15 or 16-year-old, playing with us boys then. So, yes, Myron was a big influence in my younger days. And then from the youth team, it was progressing to the first team. Took a few years and a few trips to play elsewhere under different teams like Machynlleth, Penryncoch, and then obviously I got noticed again and called back to Aber. I think Tommy took over. Myron had finished, I think. And then, yes, it just went from there then, you know. But the biggest influence on my football was my dad. You know, growing up and then playing with the likes of Town and all the other clubs. Are you Dave Kinninmonth's son? That's what I used to get. Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm Dave Kinninmonth's son. Oh, your dad was this. Your dad was that. So, yeah, you know, it was hard to fill his boots, but I hope I done him proud.
I've no doubt the amount of teams that you, and we've done this Arbor as one at the moment, the amount of teams that you've ended up in as like favorite of all time, you've absolutely done your dad proud, and I'm delighted to have a chat with you this evening as well. So, so going through that Arbor team at the time, you've mentioned some of the names there. What was the setup like at the time when you first came through Arbor?
Well, I can remember as a young boy, you know, my first time training down there, 16-year-old. The youths, the reserves, and the first would all train together. A majority of the team we were all locals then, and you had the likes of, you know, for me as a 16-year-old, who'd been watching Aber for a couple of years prior to that, going down training, and then being on the pitch with Cookie, John Davis, the goalkeeper, Donald Kane, Kenny Williams, Di Pugh, Dave Humphries, Hugh George Evans. Oh, you know, it was, for me, it was a right eye-opener.
You're just listening to Hall of Fame here at the moment. It's great.
Yeah, you know, it was like, you go there and it was like, wow, I'm on the same pitch training with these guys. I don't know if it's like that now, whether the first train together or the reserves train together. But, you know, there'd be about 30, 40 players there. We'd go out for our runs around town and, you know, we'd be crawling back to the club because Myron at the time used to put us through the paces. And then we get back to the football pitch, right, come on, we're going to have a game now. We could hardly walk, let alone get on the pitch and have a game, you know. And I'll never forget one training session. It was pre-season. And pre-season, we always used to go on. This first one was a big, massive, long run. We'd start off at the club. We'd head over to the harbour, go down the bottom of Tannerboch, up over round Pendinas, down by the toll gate. That was the pub there in Penparky at the time. Through the old football park, which is now the Forum, down round the outside of Blind Ollie, through there then, into Llanbaden, up Kevin Llan, sprints up and down there, down the college track, 400-metre blinking sprints round there, and then down the Beath, and then back to the football club.
Oh.
I mean, I can remember Myron going on a bike, and he was riding behind us, going up the path at the back of Pendinas, and all we could hear was a big scream. Myron had tumbled off his bike and fallen down the bank into the brambles. Kevin Morrison was trailing behind. Kevin was never a great trainer back in them days, but all Myron had fallen off his bike and down into the brambles. So I think that was a bit of karma for Myron for putting us all through that. But no, it was good old days. Like, you know, it was, like I say, the youths, the reserves, and the first team. We'd train together, and then we'd have a big game on the football pitch at the day. It was a grass pitch in them days, and you'd train Tuesdays or Mondays and Thursdays, and it was great. At the end of it, you'd have a big game, you know, reserves and youths against the first team, and that's how you pitted your wits against, you know, the likes of Donald, who was a tricky little player, as I remember. He was reminded me of a lot of an older day Frank Lampard, if you know what I mean. He was box to box, he was skillful, and he was a prolific goal scorer from midfield. You had Kenny Williams, who was the midfield general. You had Di Pugh in the middle of the park then, who was a fantastic ball player. And, you know, he had a great eye for a pass, great vision with the guy. And they all made it look so easy. You know, and then late, I think, trying to think who was up front at the time, Graham Maudsley, another university guy, who I think came the same time as Donald. And then you had Paddy Clare, who I think played the reserves. And obviously when Cookie wasn't available, Paddy would step up and play for the first team. It was great, you know, local boys. And then the university at the time, they were playing in the centre of Wales against the likes of Aber and all the other local teams, the likes of Jock and Paddy. Dylan Jones was another one. He was another university guy from Tywyn. And, you know, they came to Aber then the following year, and that was it. It was fantastic back in them days. And you look forward to the game at the end of training. It was, you know, it's always been a great setup down in Aberystwyth. I haven't been involved with the football since I had to retire back at the age of 30. As much as I'd like to, you know, I'd like to have been able to coach and be still involved with the club, but the legs and the back, or football war wounds, they don't allow it, you know. But it's nice to see players that I played with and younger players that came through, like Martin Griffiths and Gavin Allen, who have progressed and both managed down. So yeah, it's fantastic memories of my younger days, and, you know, the setup there, absolutely immense. I can't say any more about it, you know.
For some of our younger viewers who might not have seen you in action, unfortunately, I've got to count myself as one of them, even though I am into my 30s at the moment. You were a goalkeeper, but you also had a couple of stints up front. Which one did you prefer?
Well, no, I was, when I first started, I was a midfield player. As a youngster, playing in the youths and what have you, I was either left side of midfield or a left winger. As I sort of left school at 16 and became an apprentice carpenter for a local builder, I started to fill out and I started to shoot up a bit. I was always good in the air from midfield, scored a lot of goals, a bit like Donald with the head. So natural progression was to move on to play centre forward. So I had a couple of seasons playing centre forward with, trying to get in the first team with Aber, because at that time then a certain Mr. Morrison came along, who to me was, he's got to be the best centre forward I've ever seen, and had the honour to play with, you know. You had Tommy Morgan up front on the right wing, you know. You had Mike Davis on the left wing. So to try and get in that team at the time was, especially as a young lad, and then obviously Sean Mather was another player. He came along. He was the one that really, Sean came, and then I had to go look for new pastures, because at that age I just wanted to play. I didn't want to be on the bench. So I parted ways with Aber and went to Machynlleth and Penryn Coch, two local sides, and then came back about a year or so later. So yeah, I went, you know, I was an outfield player to start with. Played up front then with Kevin and with Tommy. And then later on, obviously the leg, apparently I'd broken my ankle that I didn't know about, and I'd carried on playing. So the only time I can imagine it or think of it happening was in a football tournament in Tornagedo, which was an under-18 tournament at the end of the season. Aber and this Tornagedo football club were like, we'd go over there, play their tournament, and Aber would have a tournament over here where they would come over. And I can remember going over my ankle really bad over there, and it swelled up, and that was the end of my tournament over there. But because it was the end of the season, I'd had that bit of rest. I was able to walk on the ankle. So I obviously didn't think it was broken. But obviously it was, because at the age of 26, then I had to pack in playing outfield, which was gut-wrenching for me at the time, because that's all I ever wanted to be, was a footballer. Obviously I didn't make the grade as a professional, but to play for my home town, being Aberystwyth and Machynlleth and a couple of others in between, was a great honour, and to play, like when we were younger, we used to get the professional teams used to come down to Aberystwyth, use the university facilities, and then at the end of their week's training, they'd have a friendly against Abertown. I was lucky enough to be involved playing against Chelsea twice. Millwall was another one, or either Millwall or QPR. And the big Mick McCarthy was, he played for Republic of Ireland in I think it was the 1990 World Cup in America. And it was either Millwall or QPR. And I think Stewart McCall was there as well. I always remember this red-haired guy in midfield. So it could have been Millwall. They came and we played against them. Oh, Mick McCarthy, it was like bouncing off a brick wall, And I never forget him. I went into a challenge and bounced off this guy, and he leant over and he picked me up by the scruff of the neck. He said, "Get up, young boy." He said, "Wipe them cigarette butts from underneath your football boots, like, innit?" And I'm like, what? What's going on? But in the clubhouse after the game, what a gentleman. He came over, he took time out to sit with all us young players, and he talked about his experiences in the World Cup. And at the end, he came over and he said, "Yeah, boys, we've been given drink vouchers here. We can't drink them, obviously, because we're professionals, but have a good night on us, boys." And he just gave us all the drinks vouchers. He was such a gentleman. And used to see him on the telly, and you'd see that nasty side of Mick McCarthy. But we were lucky enough, we saw the other side of him, And I was a schoolboy, a Chelsea fan, from the age of 4. I'd grown up supporting Chelsea from a young age. And to actually play against them boys was, it was a dream come true for me. And the last game we actually played against them, I played up front. Paul Elliott had just signed from Celtic for 1.4 million, I think. And then you had Ken Monkou, the big Dutch international centre-back. Dave Besant was in goal at the time. He was a reserve England keeper. And we lost 4-1, and I was lucky enough to score that day.
But that was my next question. What was that like for your Chelsea fan?
Well, it's something. Well, I got goosebumps now remembering it. It's something that will live me forever. I wasn't the quickest on the pitch, but nobody that day caught me when I was off running, celebrating after scoring that goal. It was that Chelsea team at the time that was so full of internationals. You had David Speedy, Kerry Dixon, Gordon Jury up front, 2 Scottish internationals, and Kerry Dixon had played for England, innit? You had Pat Nevin, you had Spackman in midfield. He later on went on to play for Liverpool. You had in the back Graham Lasso, England left back. You had Jason Cundy, who was a Chelsea player, but then went on to Tottenham. It was, and we'd go out round the town of a night time, and you'd bump into them. I mean, as Emir Jones, I was watching a video with Emir last night. There's nothing much in Aberystwyth for youngsters to do but to go out round the pubs.
No, absolutely not.
And then, you know, we used to go out around the pubs after training, or, you know, we had pool night on a Tuesday or a Monday, and we'd have darts night on a Thursday. So it was like train hard, you know, and this, oh, hang on, you just done all that training, and then you had darts or pool, so you go out and you'd have a few beers after. But we were all part of it, you know, we all grew up, and I think that's, back in the day, how we made, you know, it was great team spirit. You know, not just on a Saturday after the game, it was training. We go out and we play pool. We go out and we play darts. But it was the boys, you know, and you'd build up that camaraderie. And, you know, great memories, you know. But that, you say, that memory of scoring against Chelsea, that's one that will live with me forever. I mean, Liverpool we played against as well. I think there was a goalkeeper, Bob Hooper, American guy in goal. I think Liverpool sent their reserves down, Nicky Tanner, and you had the likes of Di Blair playing at the time, who was a big Liverpool fan. So what I had against Chelsea, them boys had against their Liverpool. You know, Liverpool back in them days were, you know, they were heaped in European tradition and all that, weren't they? Graham Souness had been down when I was younger. I think he was playing for Middlesbrough. And they played a pre-season friendly. He later went on to play for Liverpool. It was, you know, back in them days, it was great as a youngster growing up and having these top sides come down and play Aberystwyth in friendlies and pre-seasons.
The thing is,
you
you get people in the club then as well, don't you? So.
Oh, it was, you know, and back then, you know, local boys, that's all you wanted to do. After seeing all that, you wanted to represent your local club, you know. You get a chance to play against these teams, and you know, Aber is I can remember as an 18-year-old, I just finished my youth days, and that's when the Ian Rush tournament started. We didn't have that, you know, but the generation after, they were lucky to have the Ian Rush tournament where you had the likes of Robbie Fowler, Michael Owen, Phil Neal's boy. They were all there, you know. Cardiff City would bring a side, Everton would bring a side, Swansea had a side. There'd be teams from abroad. Peter and Love that played for Coventry City. He was playing for some Zimbabwe select side. They were over here, you know. And things like that were good. But now the Ian Rush, Aber lost that a few years back, and it's all down in Cardiff, I think now. But Aberystwyth, you never had. It was like it was the back of beyond, you know. If you didn't live down Swansea, Cardiff area, then you weren't picked up as a young player. If you didn't live up North Wales, you know, you had the likes of Liverpool, Manchester United. They would pick up the young players from the North Wales area. But there was an abundance of talent in Aberystwyth. I mean, Kevin was lucky enough to go to Wolverhampton Wanderers, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Johan Bebb was another one. He went to Wolverhampton Wanderers. There was Will Evans, who went to Chelsea on trials. No, he was an outstanding goalkeeper. One of him and Cookie, best shot stoppers I've ever seen. And then, you know, to play and goal for Aber after them too, later on in my career, it was following them footsteps. It was brilliant. But, you know, Titch Morgan was another one. He was outstanding. But them players, you know, Will was lucky enough to go. Kevin was lucky enough. Johan was. Titch Morgan, now to me, he was a little midfield dynamo, you know. He was like, he had the red head. He was like a Duracell battery. He was, you know, non-stop, run. He'd last forever, you know, but skillful with it. But they didn't, if you'd made 18, 19 by then and you hadn't been snapped up, you wouldn't make it. But then we didn't seem to have the scouts around here until later on when Ian Rush came, you know. So, you know, likes of Andy Evans, who went to, I think he was spotted in Ian Rush, and he went to Cardiff. I don't know if young Matthew Jones, that's playing for Aberystwyth at the time, was he involved in, it wouldn't have been the Ian Rush then, it would have been the Cymru League Festival Cup or something. But, you know, it was, you know, it's great, you know. I mean, I love Aber, you know. and I've been lucky enough to more or less play every position for Aber. That's my claim to fame. And when Dad was alive, and people used to say to me, "Oh, you're Dave's son," and this, that, and the other, I want to play, blah, blah, blah. And my response at the end was, "Yeah, but did he play in goal for Aber?" You know? And we used to have a laugh and a chuckle. I mean, Dad, as a youngster, I had a knee injury, which kept me out of football for a year. And I think I was about 11 at the time, and it broke my heart. You know, I couldn't, and I was in this plaster. I was in this pink splint thing that I had to take off every night, exercise my leg, and I wasn't allowed to put pressure on it, and I wasn't allowed to play contact sport for another year. So I played in goal, I think, to try and get around it for Hurricanes. That was before I moved down to Aberystwyth. And I had a year then, and I loved playing in goal. And I said to Dad then, "Oh, Dad, I'd love to carry on playing in goal." "Don't be lazy," he said to me. "You're a good outfield player." Yeah, that's what his words. Don't be lazy. You can always go back and goal later on in your career. And right enough, he was right, you know. I was lucky enough to play for Aber in all them outfield positions, score against my childhood team. And then obviously when injury ended my outfield career, I couldn't let it go, you know. I couldn't let it go. It was like I was 26. What am I going to do for the rest? I love my football. I couldn't. And I'll never forget, there was an under-23 tournament in Holland again with this Tornegito club. Now, Chris Brown was involved with the youth team at the time. Another great coach in Town's history. They didn't have a goalkeeper. I was 25 at the time, but back in the day, I had the young looks in it. I looked younger than what I was. Now it's, got grey hair, grey beard, and look older than what I am. But they didn't have a goalkeeper, and I said to Chris, and my friends were going over, I said, "If you're stuck for a keeper, Chris, I'll play in goal for you." So we went over, and I played in goal for this tournament. Now, Stan, my friend, was manager of Penryn Court Reserves at the time. He played, and he said, "Oh, Stu," he said, "come and play for me." He said, "Next year, come and play for me after this tournament." I said, "Stan, you've got Des in goal for you, Des Roberts. Brilliant goalkeeper. Stick with him." I said, I haven't played in goal, Stan." So he said, "All right then, Stu, thanks for thinking of Des." And Des was another good friend of mine. I wouldn't like to tread on his toes. Anyway, came back to Aber, and next day I had a phone call from Chris Carter. And I think Emir Brains might have been involved at the time with Bow Street. Chris came on the phone. He said, "Stu," he said, "I hear you're packing in football, and this, that, and the other, but you think you might, have, might make yourself into a goalkeeper." I says, "Well, I enjoy it, Chris, and what have you. Well, I'd like to give it a go." He said, "Will you come and play for us then?" "Oh, fine, no problem." So I went, played a few pre-season games with them, and I think I played 6 games. Now, myself and Carter and Brains, we used to drink in Canes at the time, where Donald Kane used to run, innit? He used to own the club chairman. Obviously, word had got back to Donald, and Donald was managing Penryn Court Football Club at the time. And we'd go out to the darts or the pool and to Canes. Donald wanted me to go to play for Penryn Court. So I'd only played 6 games in the district league at the time. Now I'm being asked to play for Penryn Court in the Cymru Alliance. So what have I got to lose? Football is in my blood. I wanted to play as high as I could for as long as I could. Jock, I'd be honoured. So I went to Penryn Court. Now, by Christmas time, we had to go back to Tommy Morgan, who was manager of town at the time. I got him on the phone. "Stu, I'm not happy with the goalkeeper we've got here. Will you come and play in goal for Aber Town?" I said, "Well, Tom," I said, I'm honoured that you think I'm good enough to play for Aber Town." I said, "But it's my first season in goal. I'm still, green as a goalkeeper. I'm still learning my trade as a goalkeeper. I've only had half a season. I said, Tom, if you're still interested in me at the end of the season, you owe it to Penryn Cork for giving me a chance. I'd like to see the season out with them. And if you're still interested next year, I'll certainly think about coming to sign for Abertown. So I had the year at Penryn, and pre-season, Tommy asked me to go, and I had a word with Donald, and Donald said, go on, son, on you go. You know, and Donald was great like that. He would never stand in your way if you want to progress, you know. And he's done that throughout his time as chairman of Aberystwyth Club as well. You know, players like Tom Bradshaw, Andy Evans going on to Barnsley, Tom on to Shrewsbury, I think, at the time. Alex Samuels went to Swansea, all them players. If you know, were going to progress, Donald and Abertown would encourage you. So, yeah, and that was it. You know, I within a year of starting to play in goal, I'm playing in goal for Abertown. It's like weird, you know. 1991, I'm 92, I'm scoring, playing up front and scoring against the likes of Chelsea. 92, 93, I went to Llanidloes Town with Myron Appleton. And that was I actually played in goal for them one game. We were playing Bangor City, and the goalkeeper at the time, Richard Morse, we went 1-0 down, and after about 5 minutes, Richard Morse went in with a challenge with the centre forward, dives at the centre forward's feet, and he broke his hand. So I was playing up front for Llanidloes at the time, and Myron said, Stu, will you go and go? Because going back again to Myron, I can remember playing for Myron in the Aberystwyth League. And Jonathan Llewellyn was in goal for Aber at the time. And they had a game down in Inter Cardiff, or AFC Cardiff, Inter Cardiff, or wherever. It was in Sully. Is it Sully? Not Sully, Roath in Cardiff, somewhere. Anyway, this Will Evans was injured, the reserve team keeper. He couldn't play. They didn't have a keeper. So Myron asked, Stu, will you come and play in goal for us? I think we only lost that game 1-0 down there. They were league leaders at the time, and the same with Bangor City and Llanny. So it was like, I played for Myron in goal for Aber as a youngster, that one game. I'd followed Myron from Aber to Llanidloes for a year. I played in goal for him there. And then when I later went back to Aber with Tommy, I think Tommy got relieved of his duties that one year when I'd gone back to Aber. And who came back to Aber was Mr. Appleton. So I played for 3 clubs for Myron as centre forward, centre half, and goalkeeper. So, you know, and to play for that guy, you know, I mean, Myron was probably the most successful manager in Abertown's history. Back in, you know, when me as a youngster, the Central Wales days, the Welsh Amateur Cup winning side, you know, Aber were the team, you know. And of course, then it was it went from the Central Wales to, I think it was the Aberystwyth League. It was the South Wales division, and then you had the North Wales. I don't know if Caesws were in the Aberystwyth at the time. And then it went to become the Conical League. I think that's when Caesws and Newtown joined. And I could be wrong. But then, you know, it was the North Wales and then they all combined then, didn't they? You know, I had to retire at 30. And for about 5 or 6 years after me retiring, I took it really hard, you know. I blamed football a lot, which is why it baffled me. I don't know whether it was because I'd had to retire so early. I felt when I used to go out, you weren't part of the crowd anymore because, you know, you weren't involved with, and that's what people these days maybe don't understand. Football back in them days was more than just a game on a Saturday afternoon. it was, getting together in the morning, 9 o'clock, meeting down the football club, jumping on the bus, going to North Wales, South Wales, having a game of cards on the bus and having a laugh with the boys, stop off halfway, have breakfast, play the game, a couple of drinks after the club, in the club or wherever we were playing, jump on the bus, game of crash again. A few drinks on the bus on the way home, and then we'd get back to town, and we'd all be all together going out on a Saturday night. So it wasn't just the afternoon of, the hour and a half of kicking the ball around. It was a whole day thing. And then when you sort of like had to step back from it all, you just felt, I felt lost, I didn't feel part of that crowd anymore, which was silly because they were all still my friends. But for some reason, I couldn't go and watch football. And I had a bit of depression. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It hit me really hard. I was self-employed builder, and I couldn't do the things what I used to be able to do. And I went in a big black hole. And Dad stepped up to the plate then, not just as my mentor in football. My dad, he was my best mate. And the likes of Stephen Richards, David Gornall, Martin Griff, all them friends, they stood by me in my darkest hour. And, it was only the last 10 years or so I started going back and watching the town again. But these last few years with, COVID, it's been hard again, isn't it? You can't go down and watch your football. It's a big void from your life when you have to pack in early, And that's why I say to players, look after yourself when you're young, but play as long as you can because you're a long time retired, and it's it can get pretty lonely, when you see your mates out there playing, going away on a Saturday, and you can't do it anymore. It's but I'd like to have given more back to the club and the game that gave me so many great memories, but the body didn't allow it, Now I'm in a better place. I enjoy, I still love my football, watching it on the TV. I mean, I'd love to get involved with a club later on, but these days you've got to have the coaching badges, haven't you? You've got to be able to, now I can't physically do that. So, sometimes you have to say, Sam Ferrian, as my dad used to say, you that's life. You just have to make the most of it and just enjoy watching the football again. And, that's what I do. I enjoy watching now. And I enjoy seeing my friends who I grew up with moving on to bigger, better things. Martin Griffiths, he's coaching out in Australia. Gavin, putting his A license badge and coaching Aberystwyth, take my hat off to him, and I'm really proud that I grew up and I played with them boys, and it was an honour, to be on the same pitch as them all. And I'm so happy for them, seeing what they're doing in their lives. But, that's football for you, isn't it? It can be ended just like that, So any young players out there, look after yourselves when you're young. Don't play on, with little niggles, because them little niggles take toll on your body later on in life. And, but if you're lucky enough to stay fit and avoid these injuries, play as long as you can. Freddie is testament to that. And Iron, I think he played till the age of 38 or 40 for Aberystwyth, was it?
Paddy
and Iron Thomas, Gary Lewis, and they're coaching their home club towns now, aren't they? Penryn Court.
They've done a fantastic job up there as well.
Oh, brilliant! And for them boys, they are Penryn Court locals through and through. They grew up in Penryn Court, but they were lucky enough and they were good enough to go and play for town. Penryn and Aber, years and years ago, there was a bit of friction. It was because they played against each other a lot in the Central Wales. But then later on, friendships were made. Richie Jenkins, he used to help out with the town. Donald Kane managed the town. We were all friends, you know, and it was like, you know, I was lucky enough. I played for Penryn. I played for Aber. Great football clubs, you know. They really, really looked after you. And for them two boys, Sean James, another Penryn boy. You know, Martin Griff, his mother lived in Penryn. It was good for them, you know. And now for them to go back, they're giving something back to their local side, aren't they? You know, and Penryn, a very successful club in their own right.
Absolutely.
You know, for a village club,
absolutely, yeah.
to, you know, to play in Cymru Alliance, and you're playing Cymru Alliance, the likes of Flint, Mould, you know, Connors Key used to be in it. Oh, you know, Kai Sousa in it, another village club. For them to hold their own in leagues like that, it's, you know, and the trips we used to have there, you know, Tommy Lewis, Gary's dad, driving the minibus, Rob Burner, another boy who played for town. Oh, it was, you know, great memories of playing in my days with Aber, but also with Penryn, and we were all friends, you know. You look at, well, Abertown now, Jonathan Evans up front, another Penryn boy. Yeah. His dad, Mel, the coach.
Yeah.
I can't say Mel the buses because he'll give me a row. Mel the coaches, isn't it? Yeah. Because we used to wind Mel up about that. And he was with us in that trip in Tornegito when I was 18. You know, I can remember Mel was the bus driver. He drove us over. We caught a ferry that day. And another lad, Martin Hagler Harris, I should say. He was based in Germany at the time, I think, in the army. Him and his mate drove down from Germany to join us in Holland. It was brilliant. You know, my dad was manager of the youth at the time when we were over there. I'll never forget it. You know, Mel, and brilliant times. But they don't get that these days, do they? You know, the youths, I don't think they do anyway.
We got the South, but that's it. And we won that a couple of years back, but there's nothing on tournaments-wise.
No tournaments at all. But, you know, look at how successful the under-19s are with Aber now. Barry Morgan, another, you know, I mean, Brains was involved, wasn't he, with the under-19s. And then Richard Lucas and Hugh Bonner, he was one of my neighbours. They took it on for a while. Richard Lucas and Bonner, what was Brains involved with them? Richie Jones, was he involved?
Yeah, he was involved
as well. Yeah, and that's it. Barry Morgan took over about 2 or 3 years ago, didn't he? You know, and, you know, but I find, as Brains mentioned last night, and I think, was it Paul that was on last night with Brains? Yeah. No, I didn't know. It was Brian Coyne's son.
Yeah.
Oh, he's another great man. I mean, I got so much respect for that guy. Scotsman like my dad, you know. But, you know, there's no step up really from youth football or under-19s now to the first team. We were lucky enough back in the day to have the reserves. You know, if we, you know, progress from the youth, have a season in the reserves, or if you were good enough, you'd be straight in the first team. But then if you weren't getting games, you'd go back and you play for the reserves to get a bit more match practice. Now, to step up from a youth league to playing in a man's league is a big step. You know, I mean, even, you know, the professional sides, they've got their under-16s, their under-18s, their under-19s. They've also got their under-23s, isn't they? Yeah? Well, we haven't got under-23s. We've got the under-19s, that's it. So, you know, you can't, there's no place for you to go to get that experience. You have to go away and play for clubs in lesser leagues.
Yeah.
But are you getting, you know, is that benefiting you playing in a lower league when you're not playing against, you know, if you're playing for a reserve side, to me, I think they should have like a reserve league. You've got the League of Wales. There should be a reserve league for the teams in the League of Wales as well. Because, you know, the quality of the players, I mean, squad of Aber, you know, they must have what, 20 odd in the squad there? 25 is the squad numbers. So they can only have, 15 in a match day squad. So what happens to them other 10 players? I mean, if they were in a reserve league, them other 10 players could be playing against the 10 players from the other side's reserves, plus one or two of the youth boys mixed in, integrated with them to get used to playing against men. Because it is, and I can remember stepping up from youth to district league, playing against men. District league was a tough league back in the day. Central Wales was the league at the time, and Aber proved it was, they were the best around because they used to win that year in, year out, and then the Intermediate Cup, which was the amateur cup in the day. But it was a big step, and I feel the youngsters these days haven't got that. It's like a natural progression from the.
Do you feel that you be able to make that step? You going through from youth football to district league and then up into the first team. Do you think that was beneficial to you?
I think it was. I was involved with Abertown from the age of 16. On the fringe, I was on the bench at the age of 18. But you had the likes of Kenny Williams in midfield. Cookie as a goalkeeper was strong as an ox. Paul Hughes, a centre half, was a man mountain. You had big Graham Maudsley up front, who was 6 foot, blinking 6'4", and built like a battering ram. Me as an 18-year-old, who was a very small 18-year-old, if I had to play against them players, I wouldn't have had a hope in hell.
No.
So, playing with the reserves, yes, there was, obviously not as good as the first team, otherwise they'd be in the first team. But you were playing, there were fringe players with the first, like Sir Hugh Thomas at the time, Hutch used to call him, Nipper Sutton, who played for Town for many years. You had Ian Wilkins, you had Brian Pugh-Jones, who was still playing at the time. So, you were playing with men. All right, they might have been at the end of their careers or some at the beginning of their careers, but you had that little step up from the youth, which then helped you when you went into the first team because you played against men week in, week out, I mean, with Town at the moment now, they haven't got that. It's like, I've watched over the years, and there's a few young boys, they're on the bench. Then they get disheartened because they're not, they can't play on a Saturday with their mates. They're in the first team, but they're not getting games. And then they slowly disappear. So they get disillusioned because they can't, make that step up from the youth to the first team.
Do you think there's a danger there of, as you're saying about the disillusionment, like you said yourself earlier on about how you felt a love for the football and how it's...
Yeah, I do. I honestly
do you think there's a danger of that happening with that lack of game time you get from some of the kids?
I think it is, as a youngster, I don't care who you are, all you want to do is play. Yeah, you don't want to be stuck on the bench, and that's why, I moved away from Aber at the time because I wasn't getting game time. The likes of Martin Griff, he moved, he played with us in Machynlleth, he played with us in Llanidloes with Myron, and Iron Thomas, he played with us in Llanidloes. Who else? Russell Richards played with us in Llanidloes. Di Blair played with us in Llanidloes. You weren't getting that time, and the reserves had gone by then as well. So you had to go away to be able to play. And I feel that, there's players around here now that, they come out of youth football and they might not be quite ready for the step up at the moment, but then they've got nowhere, like we were lucky enough to have the reserves. I mean, Penryn Coch, are they good enough? But the Cymru Alliance is a tough league,
Hard league.
It's a very physical league, I played for Penryn and I played for Llanidloes and it. it's physical, you know.
You've got to have your wits about you.
You got, you know, and there's some big boys there, and it's hard, you know. Central Wales, yes, all right, but to me, it's not like the Central Wales back in the day was the league to be in. Or I think it was Montgomeryshire League then with the Newtown area. I'm not sure it was Mid Wales South. I can't remember what would have been down, you know, South Wales side. But quality, you know, I mean, you go back and when I was a youngster, you had the likes of Penparky. You know, Richie Jones played for Penparky. Brian Evans, another Abertown player. You had Torag, it was in goal at the time. I can't remember his proper name, but he was a good goalkeeper. Russell Richards, Kevin, myself, we guested for Penparky. Penparky were Emirates Morgan Cup winners back in the day. Spike Hartnell, another great centre forward. A guy called Lee Jenkins. Now, Lee Jenkins, probably the most gifted footballer I've had a chance to play with. The things he could do with the ball was unbelievable. But I only played with him for a year or two. We had a year at Machynlleth and we had the odd game together in Penparky. But that boy, you know, he was an ex-professional with Aston Villa, I think. And then he moved over to Finland, played Finnish professional football, met his wife over there, but then came back over here. I mean, he had to pack in professional football through injury. I think was either ankle or knee, that was as well. But you know, but no, I think it is. It's the young. I think a lot of the young players, they get disillusioned. They, you know, they can't make it, and then they fall by the wayside. You know, and as Brain said last night, they fall in the trap. They go and play for a local side, and they're out round the pubs and this, that, and the other. You know, there's nothing else to do in Aber. No. You know, I mean, when I was youngster, we had the roller disco. I mean, I think my run banned us from going there in case we broke our legs. But you know, but there's nothing really in Aber to do, is there? But the pubs. So if they don't make the football, the same happened with Brains. Brains didn't make the grade, and then he fell in the Aber trap. Too many pubs in Aberystwyth. Yeah, and it's a shame, you know, because there is a lot of talent. I mean, my daughter now, she's 15, and she plays football for the school. And then you go down and watch the Earth tournaments, you know, with the football. There's some cracking young players around, but then you don't see them after. Or I don't see them, you know. Are they playing for district league sides? And then, you know, or they don't bother? I suppose the best are involved with the Aber Academy. But I think Aber Academy isn't just like Aber local boys. It's teams like Tywin, which is great, you know. But no, there's nowhere for them young players, I feel, to go after, you know.
And speaking of youngsters, it's probably a nice opportunity now to turn to a subject very, very close to your heart. Your dad was a manager of the youth team and the reserve team.
Yeah.
Sum up for us what your dad meant to you and to us as a football club.
How long have you got? How long have you got? I mean, no, Dad was the sort of guy. He was a great man manager, you know. He'd not just with the football. I mean, he later worked. He was a BT ground worker or T1 jointer and plumber. He finished his time with BT and he went to work in Pantycelyn, halls of residence. Now, a Scotsman living in Aberystwyth for 30, 40 years decides to learn Welsh, works in the Welsh halls of residence. The students up there loved him, you know. He was like, and Dad always used to say, these youngsters, it's their first time away from their parents. They've got nobody they can turn to, you know. And they used to call it Dave. It was either Dave Porthor or David Albanor or Dad, yeah. And that's what he was like to a lot of the young players. He was someone, he'd take time to talk to you. If you had problems, he'd sit and listen. he'd help you through it. I mean, you know, playing up in Machynlleth, he used to pick people up. There was a young lad, Nguyen, sadly lost his life in a motorbike accident by Machynlleth there many years ago. I mean, his mother wouldn't drive, or couldn't drive. He lived up in the sticks by Llanbermire somewhere. Well, Dad was living in Aber, coaching up in Mach, but then he'd drive from Aber, he'd go up to Llanbermire, pick Sean up, bring him down, training, take him home after. You know, he had time for anybody and everybody, you know. Not just in his football life, but in his everyday life. And I knew he was, you know, Dad was football through and through, but over his passing now, the last 3 weeks, you know, he was a keen golfer, he was a keen dart player. The messages I've had from people, you know, like young Joseph Evans was one. His mother owns the Marine Hotel. He sent me a lovely message that him and Dad it was his first golf tournament. As a senior, but still playing, you know, as a junior. He was that good. He was playing senior golf competition. His first competition, he said. The weather was atrocious. Our scores were diabolical, he said. Everybody seemed to be walking in on the 15th green. But your dad turned around to me. He said, Joe, young Joe, he said, come on, he said, I'll come around the trees with you. And they called the trees the 16th, 17th and 18th up in Aber Golf Club. He said, the other guy walked in that was with them. There was 3 of them playing. But your dad said, come on, we'll go around the trees. We'll see if we can get a 2, he said. Because at the time, if you had a 2, you could win golf balls and stuff, innit? So he said, I'm on the 18th, he said, I put my tee shot to within 20 foot. So we get down on the green. I hole a 20-footer. He said, I'm over the moon. I turn around and look at your dad. Your dad is jumping up and down. He said, he's so happy, you know. He's so happy for him. And he said, from that day on, he said, me and your dad became good friends. And he said, I got selected to play for the Welsh schoolboy golfing team. And we were playing up in Scotland, and your dad came around to me and he said, young Joe, he said, go easy on the young Scotsman, you know. And he said, little stories, things like that have come out, you know. I didn't realise, we knew Dad was popular, but not just as a footballer, but in the golfing, you know, golf club, the dart world, and anybody who, I mean, you know, he was an immense bloke, you know, and he kept my feet firmly on the ground. He was, you know, he managed me at youth level. He managed me in Machynlleth. And my grandfather used to watch us, you know, and he'd phone my mum, oh, Stewart was man of the match, you know, he had a hell of a game today, and blah, 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 blah. So on Sunday dinner time, we'd be sitting down, having, you know, chats, and mum would say, oh, you were brilliant, I heard you had a great game yesterday, Stu, you were, you know, man of the match. And then Dad would chip in, yes, but he didn't do this. He could have done that, or he should have done this. I'm like, shit, there's no, you know, there's no pleasing this guy. But what he did was he kept my feet on the ground, you know. I mean, he could have bulled me up and said, yeah, and then you could, you know, you know, your heads, you wouldn't get through the blinking doorway.
Yeah.
But twice Dad ever said to me, I'll never forget them. The one time I was playing for Aberystwyth District League Youth Select side, and it was against Montgomeryshire Select side in Llanidloes. Arthur West was the manager. We won 2-1 that game. I scored one and made one. I scored a free kick, I think, from about 25 yards. Now, game final whistle's over. Next thing, I got a tap on my shoulder. I turn around on the pitch. My dad's on the middle of the pitch, shaking my hand. Well done, son. Well done. I'm like, what the hell are you doing on here? You know? He said, you know, really, he turned around to Arthur and he said, Arthur, what position did you play him in? He said, I just told him to go out there and enjoy himself. Just go out and express yourself. Enjoy yourself. And that's what I did. The second time was 15 years later, playing in goal for Abertown against the great Barry Town side at the time. I mean, they had the likes of David Giles, Paul Giles brothers. I think Paul Evans was up front for them. Gary Lloyd, left back. Oh, they had a hell of a side. We lost 2-1 in Park Avenue. And I saved a penalty from Gary Lloyd that game. I come off the pitch again. Well, before I come off the pitch, Dad's on the centre circle, shaking my hand. Well done, son. You proved me wrong. I said, what do you mean you proved me wrong? He said, well, all them years ago, when I told you as a youngster, don't be lazy. And it went back to then. He didn't forget. And them 2 moments for me were so special.
It's priceless.
It was like, he was a great, I didn't realize, I knew he was a great footballer. I idolized him as a child. I followed him, when he, I think I was too young. I was 1967. I was born. So when they won the amateur, the intermediate cup, amateur cup back in the day, 1970-71, I would have only been 3. But I can remember Dad as me as a 5-6-year-old playing for Mach. People couldn't get nowhere near him. I used to call him Twinkle Toes because that's what he was. And there was nothing of Dad. There was, he was a very, very slight man. I was the same as a youngster, but I've got like a bit of a belly on me now. But back in them days, and he always used to say to me, he says, don't dilly-daddle. He says, don't dangle your foot in there. Get stuck in. You'll get hurt if you dangle your foot. And he was right, There was nothing of him, but anybody will tell you he wasn't afraid to get stuck in, and, the tributes we've had, the likes of Donald to say the great words he said, Myron, the messages we've received, people from Machynlleth, Des West, Arthur West's brother, it's been immense, it's been humbling, to be honest, knowing how well thought of Dad was, and as a family, it's been really comforting for us all these last 3 weeks,
Stewart, thank you very, very much for your time. Honestly, we could talk all day here. I really appreciate you giving up your evening for me.
I've loved it.
Before we go tonight, I just want to ask you a couple of quick fire questions about your career. So the first question I want to ask is, who's the best player you played with or against?
I mentioned a few of them there now tonight. Morrison, I was in awe of playing up front with. Jock, Donald, as a midfielder. Kenny Williams, Jonathan, John Davis, Cookie, brilliant. Will Evans. I could go on and on. There's too many to mention, But to say Morrison has to be the best, centre forward, goal scorer. He could bring players into the game. His touch. It was head and shoulders of Lee Jenkins. Them two, they could do anything and everything with the ball. It was like it was tied to their bootlaces, and it would stick to their feet like glue.
I hate playing against people like that. So you look at them going, "How are you so good?" And it's like you can't.
It was, Like, Kevin was only a year. He's only a year older than me, and I can remember playing against Kevin. I was playing for Machynlleth or Penglai School, playing against Wellspool School. Who the hell is this guy? And then a year or two later, he's playing for Aber. He was something else, something else. I wish I did.
Sorry, it kind of answered the next question as well. Who's the worst trainer that was at Abertown in your time?
I just mentioned him again already. Kevin Morrison. I say that story I said earlier about Myron falling over on his bike. I think Kevin was walking by his side at the time. And another time, I think he jumped in a car with somebody. And we got down to the bottom of Constitution Hill, and we had to run up and down there 3 times.
Oh.
That's the sort of training, my run and Tommy and, you know, but no, Kevin used to get away with it, didn't he? Because Kevin was Kevin. He was irreplaceable. But no, you know, and he'd never stop moaning. Training, he'd never stop moaning. But that was Kevin. That was Kevin. You know, honour to play with. But you see, training-wise, no. And he'll probably tell you himself he hated training, you know. But on coming Saturday, he'd be there, bang, go. Left foot, right foot, head. Immense. Utmost respect for the guy. Utmost respect.
Again, you've touched on this, I think. Favourite memory playing for Aber?
Well, always has to be playing against, Chelsea, scoring against Chelsea. But also them 2 moments, you know, with Dad coming on the pitch, and also that 1 year, my first year in goal for Aber, I think it was, winning Players Player of the Year and Supporters Player of the Year. To win them meant so much to me, you know. But also just pulling on that black and green shirt, whether it was playing right back, left back, centre back, midfield, up front, goalkeeper. And when I retired, I did have a year as youth team coach at the time with Mike Gilbert. So, but sadly, I couldn't carry on with that because the legs got too bad, and then the operations came thick and fast, didn't they? So, but no, it's been an honour to wear that black. And every time you put that shirt on, it meant something, you know. And that's what I find these days. I think some players just turn up for the money. They haven't got that pride in that black and green shirt like we used to have in the day, you know. And it's sad sometimes. Some have, you know, come from afar and they made Abertown their hometown, you know. But for me, it's just pulling on that shirt. It meant so much, you know, and representing your town. You know, and I hope there's many years of local boys having the same experience that we've been lucky enough to have. And, you know, I wish Abertown many years of success. You know, it's a great club, great family club. And, you know, with Dad's passing, you know, they've gone out, you know, above and beyond. I can't thank them enough, you know. We can't, you know, Mum, Dad, Andrea, myself, everybody been immense, you know. I'm getting, you know, so emotional about it now. It was a, you know, great touch by Abertown, and as Dad and myself are both honoured to play for Abertown.
Those words, honestly, just that they say that black and green shirt is the reason why we all love that. It's the reason we all love this club. It's the reason why. And I live down in South Wales, and I went as a student up in Aberystwyth, and I still go back now 12 years later. It's like what is wrong with me? Like it's.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Jock was a student. Yeah, he's still in Aber. I mean, I played with the likes of Anthony Thomas from Trearis, Mark Davis from Aberdeen. Yeah, you know, I mean, I finished playing for Aber, and I think it was the year I told Myron, I said, "Look, Myron, this is going to have to be my last season. My ankle won't hold up anymore." And then was it Martin Harris, goalkeeper? Came down from Forest Green, I think it was. And then Myron got sacked that following year. Barry Powell came, and they qualified for Europe. Now, I went over with my mum and dad to watch the game in Floriana. And I bought, no, I didn't buy. Donald Kane actually gave me an Abertown football strip. And I've still got that to this day. And my daughter actually wore it as a tribute to Dad in his funeral on Tuesday. So that's how much Abertown means to us as a family, you know. And my daughter, who idolised her grandfather, wore his, or that football top. and one of my old black and green Abertown shell suit tops. She wanted to wear the Abertown kit as a tribute to her grandfather.
Oh, so lovely that.
It was, and going down that day, seeing Jock, the chairman, Myron, ex-manager, Mel Evans was there, as I touched earlier, Martin Hagler-Harris, Richie Jones, Clive Jones, Mr. Blair, Ian Blair from the Shipman Castle, a few people from Machynlleth, they were there, I had my Abertown tie on with my kilt for Dad as well. It was that's what ABBA meant, and being able to represent ABBA, and it's ABBA runs through our veins, as well as Machynlleth, where we're from as well originally, but wearing that black and green meant so much to us both. And hopefully my daughter one day she might
we've got a very good ladies team.
Well, I've tried, and she played rugby for ABBA in the mixed team. But Dad, with me, he never pushed me. It was up to me if I wanted to. I mean, my daughter, she's a keen runner. She's a keen rugby player, keen footballer. It's up to her, I'm not going to push it. Dad never pushed nothing on me. But she might surprise me one day and, get involved with the, because I think Andy Evans is involved.
Yeah, Andy's managing there at the moment, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, his daughter, I think, played for them, did she? And I think Tia's teacher, Mrs. Thomas, Kelly Thomas.
Yeah.
And Gavin's wife, Lucy, or Gavin's girlfriend, Lucy Gwilt, who Tia babysits for every so often when Gav and Lucy fancy a night out, or if they've got football training, and Gav was coaching, Tia would go up and babysit. But obviously with this now, we can't even see your friends, can you?
Mm.
But I just, it's when the gates are open to the supporters, I'll be down to see the old black and greens again.
Fantastic. There'll be a pint waiting for you at the JCL as well.
Oh, and I'll tell you what, I'll wear the kilt again and the Abertown top.
Fantastic.
So I'll give everybody a laugh.
My last question for this evening, your ultimate five-a-side team for Abertown.
Oh, right. Goalkeeper. It will be a choice between Cookie and Dovrig. Well, there again, you got Will Evans. Obviously, I can't name myself, isn't it?
Of course you can.
No, I wouldn't name myself because them three. I go Cookie in goal. Then I'd have Donald Kane, Kenny Williams, Morrison. So there's four in it. I've got one more, haven't I? Ooh, who do I go now? Ryan Nichols. No, Mr. Allen up front with Mr. Morrison, because they'd be arguing like hell, them two up front. Yeah. Kevin would be dishing the orders, Gavin would be telling him, who are you to tell me? And them two together. I think they played together, didn't they? Yes. And, they played together in the Floriana game.
Yeah.
I think they had a couple of years together, didn't they? But Ryan Nichols, he was a good centre forward as well. He was a cracking centre forward from Cardiff, and Antrisson. Great players. I'm lucky to have had. I'm still friends with the likes of Ryan, Gavin, best mate Tomo, Mark Davis. We still keep in touch. Johnny Morris in America, Tony Mailer in America, Griffey in Australia. They're all doing, and they've all gone on to bigger, better things, isn't they? But Abertown was where they, and I bet you they'll all say they'll never forget their roots, where they started, Abertown.
Stewart,
and that's what it was.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. And honestly, I would happily continue this chat for as long as we've got.
Yes, we'll have a pint. We'll have a pint down the club when we can.
Once all this is over, you're welcome to come in. More than welcome to come back in, and there's a pint with your name on it, which we'll be buying on your behalf. So
you're a gentleman. Thank you very much, Matthew, and to all the other boys. You take care, mate. All right, and stay safe.
Ta-ra.
All the best.